All right, so today is going to be episode 2 on this Holley tuning series. There were several questions in the comments that I thought were really good, so I think we're going to start by addressing a couple of those questions, and then we'll get into what we're going to talk about today. So hang loose. All right, so one really good question that I seen, and I looked back and I couldn't find the comment. There's just so many, and sometimes the way YouTube stacks the comments, I'm not sure how to sort them really good. But so basically, here's the scenario. So a guy, and he might have been in Australia, I don't remember. But so he's got a carburetor and they've been tuning on it, and he's got a wideband and it's happy at idle. And I think he said it's happy above like 20% throttle. So that 10 to 15% throttle, it's rich. And he asked how does he correct that one little area? And that is a perfect opportunity to talk about emulsion bleeds. And that is, for the most part, that is what the emulsion system is really designed for, is to take care of spots in the system that are either rich or lean. And so, let me grab a fuel bowl. Hang on. All right, so if we here's a fuel bowl, and the bottom of this sight glass or the middle of this sight glass, wherever you set it, that is going to be your fuel level. So you can imagine, and I marked it on this side. So you can imagine roughly right there where that black line is where the fuel level is going to be. So if we just take a straight edge and line it up on that line, I don't know if you can, let me get over here good. So if you can see, here is the top emulsion hole. And again, like I said, some blocks have more or less. And so ultimately, the more you have, the more you can do with them. So we'd be about right there. And if you look, it's in that hole just a little bit. It's not fully uncovered, but it's in that hole. So what happens is, the fuel is just static at that line. So it's static in this whole chamber. Let me make sure you can see. So it's static in this whole chamber, and then obviously the fuel, just gravity, right, has let the fuel go through the main jet, and it has filled that well up to the fuel bowl level line. And then because these holes go directly into the main well, then that fuel level is going to be in this well also. So what happens is when you start down the road or start a pass or whatever you're doing that you're using fuel through the carburetor, is this side, because the holes are much smaller, this side will go down and uncover the emulsion holes, and that's how you get bleed air into the main well. So what I would do first is I would confirm my float level, because here's the deal. If you move the float level down, and depending on what kind of metering block you got, so here is this is like a 600 vacuum secondary, just a basic, no rear metering block. This is the primary. And this is a late style block, as you can see from this gusset, and this one doesn't have it. So this is an earlier block, and this is the new style block. So even though this is a new style block, they're still using the early style emulsion calibration, so you've only got a top hole and a bottom hole. And I don't know if you can see, but the PVCR, the power valve restriction is really small in the 600 compared to this 950. So you can do a lot less with this block than you can this block, but some time and drill bits can make this block have ever how many holes you want it to have. So what I would do to start with is I would lower my float level, especially if it's a touch high, because it's going to be covering up this top hole. If you can get this top hole uncovered at that 10% throttle or 15% throttle, it's going to allow more bleed air into the circuit, right? Which will automatically lean it out. And as the demand and RPM increase, this well is getting lower and lower and lower and lower, right? So if the rest of the curve is right, changing this top hole a little bit should fix the off idle and shouldn't affect the upper portion very much at all, because it's already almost uncovered anyway. So you can almost guarantee at 20% throttle, it's fully uncovered anyway. So again, it may affect it a little bit, but I don't think it'll affect it much. So that's one scenario, is lowering the float. The other scenario is making this top hole a few thousandths larger. And like everything, you just got to sneak up on it, right? Because there's probably some guru that can do all kind of math and say we need this much more area to do this, but I'm not that guy. So, we unfortunately, a lot of stuff, we just do it, just test it, try it, trial and error. All right, so that, and I hope that gives a picture of how this emulsion system works, because as you go through a pull and as you change gears and it recovers, that fuel level is going up and down in this area. So tuning these, the calibration in these restrictions is how we can fix that curve, that fuel curve over the whole RPM band. And there's more to it than just this. You got an air bleed, and the air bleed is ultimately the restriction. But where that air gets to enter in the RPM band or in the fluid level location, and that's dependent on load and settings and other things, that's how because if you uncovered all the emulsion restrictions and the area of all the emulsion restrictions exceeded the area of the high-speed air bleed, I might have said idle air bleed a while ago, so we're talking high-speed air bleed. This is high-speed air bleed. Then it wouldn't make any difference where they were, but at lower RPMs, if you're cruising down the street or you trying to get it happy, whatever, it would matter then. But I don't believe most applications are ever fully uncovering all of the emulsion restrictions, but some may be. So that's that. And then I'm trying to think of how I want to go down this road. So the idle, not so much the idle, but the high side air bleed can and will affect how fast or how slow that circuit comes on, and the float level will also, because the lower the float level is, the further the fuel's got to travel to get out of the booster. So the higher it is, the faster that circuit's going to start. The lower it is, and you know, I think a lot of people in some applications they run the float level too high, just from what I've seen, and they run too much fuel pressure. And because you got an orifice, and like in these performance carburetors, the factory carburetor has like and don't quote me, but it's in the 90s, a 90 or 92 thousandths orifice in the needle and seat. Most of this performance stuff we put a 110, and some of your alcohol stuff, you know, we'll run like a 130 or a 150, and I don't do much alcohol, so the main deal is if you've got plenty of volume in the pump, right, you just don't need a ton of pressure, because volume is king. And keep the float level at a relative, because what'll happen is the orifice is getting bigger, and it's the same thing with, you know, boost, blower, or turbo on the back of an intake valve. The more area that orifice has, whatever it is, a valve, a needle and seat, the harder it is to shut it. So it's trying to shut, the float's trying to shut it, and we didn't make the mass of the float any bigger. So as the needle and seat orifice gets bigger, we need less and less pressure, because it's, you know, because of the area, it's taking more and more effort to shut it. So by design, the float level will keep coming up, not the float level, but the fuel level in the bowl will keep rising as pressure increases, because the float can't shut it. The float just doesn't have enough mass or buoyancy to shut the larger needle and seat in time, so you end up with slightly higher and slightly higher. So just be aware of that. But you know, I see stuff get fixed all the time by just lowering the float a little bit and turning the pressure down. It's pretty common, because generally speaking, you know, you don't want the circuit to start prematurely, right? Because that just creates more rich conditions. And another thing that maybe would be, since we're answering questions, another thing would be good to answer is a bunch of people talked about the accelerator pump cam, the nozzle size. So I think, and again, you know, I'm not a carburetor guru. This is just basic stuff, you know, that I have learned over the years. What I do is, and I've got a couple of them that's 100 years old, but I've got the like Holley paper catalogs, and in the back, there's a whole section in the back of the catalog that gives you the list number. And with that list number, it will tell you everything about that carburetor. What size jet it come with, what size power valve it come with, what primary and secondary accelerator pump, nozzle size, cam size, cam position, pump CC, on and on and on and on. So I always try, not always, but, you know, unless it's something that we already done, just we know that we got to do this. But outside of that, I try to start with a factory calibration. And we start with a factory calibration, and that's a good place to start, and then you can tune from there. But I find most engines will respond to less and less accelerator pump. Maybe not the duration of the pump, but the amount, you know, the nozzle size, right? And because even some stuff like 850s and maybe mostly 850s, I think, come with a 50cc pump and a 500 two barrel, 4412 500 two barrel. They also come with a 50cc pump. And we 86 that 50cc pump, put a 30 back in it. It's more than enough. They don't give any issues. And if you have a wide band air fuel ratio gauge, you'll see, you know, if you're idle and you start accelerating, it'll go super rich for a little bit and then it'll come back. And that's all just the accelerator pump. And usually I try to lean up the pump as much as possible. A 26, a 28 nozzle size, and we'll run like a white or a pink pump cam on the number 1 position, and we usually run just zero clearance on the adjustment on the pump lever. No preload, no play, just make it touch. And usually that works really well. You bigger double pumpers, you might have to run a 28 in the back and a 26 in the front and a 28 in the back, or a 26 in the front and a 31 in the back. But most of the time, unless it's a really, really heavy car, usually you can get by with like a 26, 26 or 26, 28. You usually don't need a ton of pump cam or volume usually. So just keep that in mind. And again, it's kind of I mean, I hate these stories sometimes, but for instance, we had a guy brought us a 600, just a bone stock 600 1850 vacuum secondary, and wanted it gone through and tuned up on his little 350. And it was basically a stock 350 with some kind of intake. I don't remember. I think it even still had manifolds on it. And so we went through it, put it back just like it come from Holley. Nobody had really messed with it, but it just been setting. So we went through it and put all the calibrations back just like it come from Holley. Put it on the car, and it just had a super duper fat stumble just right off idle, and it just would not go away. And so I just assumed it didn't want and I don't remember. I think they come with a 28 and a white cam, or maybe a pink cam. Anyway, whatever it was, it ended up that I had to go to the number 2 position and go up a couple of sizes on the nozzle, and then it was just crisp and clean. It was happy. And I mean, that's just, I don't know, it's just odd sometimes how they do. And I'm not going to spend the rest of the day trying to dissect why, but we 100% know it was factory calibration. And it run perfect other than the little hesitation right off idle. And so we put some pump cam in it and a little bit of nozzle, and it was perfect. And off up the road he went. So sometimes you just got to do whatever it takes to just make it happy. And sometimes they do weird things, and there's not always this super, well, A, B, and C, and that's why, and this and that and other thing, and this math. And some people get hung up on that, and you might make yourself have a headache doing that junk sometimes. So that is I ain't gonna get super deep. And one other thing, let me see if I can find one. Just hang loose. All right, so this is a problem that probably still exists today, and literally I almost lost my mind trying to figure out what this problem was. So, all right, so the accelerator pump, the nozzle has this check valve under it, right? And this is a standard pump nozzle screw. This is a dominator screw, and if you look, it's hollow, and it's almost like a banjo bolt. It's got 2 big orifices, because a lot of the dominators are 50cc pumps, and they got 35 nozzles or something crazy. So I was helping a team on like a modified dirt car, and it was a 2300 Ford, but it was modified, so it looked like a late model, but it was just a 4-cylinder class. So it was a really fancy little car, and I mean, it was a big money deal. And so they had a carburetor from somebody, I don't remember who, but there's 400 carburetor outfits, this they all have the best carburetor. So as you would just try to go around the track, it would just start blubbering up top, just like, almost like the rev limiter. So they thought they had, whatever, floating valve springs, ignition problems. So after a month of fighting with this thing, they couldn't figure it out. So they called me, and we started looking at it, and I couldn't find a problem either initially. But I knew it was really rich, and we kept going down on the jet, and nothing changed. I mean, literally, the plug did not change. And I'm like, man, it's getting fuel somewhere else. It's pulling fuel. So what it was doing was, and it seems to mostly be a four-cylinder issue, and it's got something, again, like we talked about on the first video, with goofy signals and how it's pulling on the carburetor and stuff. It's just got a different signal, and it's actually pulling fuel out of the nozzle all the time. So you come out of the turn on the straightaway, you go wide open throttle, the accelerator pump is squirting fuel, and once the fuel starts flowing, it can't stop. The needle will not shut it off. It just keeps flowing. So you've got two 31 jets that are just pouring fuel in the motor all the time. And I'm ashamed to say how we figured out what it was. So I told the guy at this time, I was just a kid. I was, 19 or 20. And we was trying to get a appointment at the chassis dyno, but it was busy, and he was busy, and they couldn't get the team and the dyno couldn't get together at the same time. So I went up to their shop, and they had a really, really, really long driveway. And so, like a moron, we take the hood off, take the air cleaner off, and I get on top of the car, and I got my feet on the radiator support, and I'm hanging on up here to a piece of the roll bar, and he takes off like, he's gonna make a quarter-mile pass. And I'm looking in the carburetor, and I see it. I see what's happening. And then he stops and almost fly off the hood and kill 12 people and all that kind of stuff. But so I seen what was happening. And so a bunch of other people was having this same problem, but they didn't know what the problem was. So that was good for us that nobody could figure it out. And they had called a bunch of carburetor companies, and nobody else could figure it out. And so I go home, and I'm scratching my head like, how do we make this stop? So I was digging through my junk, and I seen the dominator screw, and I'm like, I think I see a plan. So I put the screw in the lathe, and I drilled it on out, and I used to build a lot of Muncies. And so if you ever had a Muncie apart, the main shaft has individual needle bearings, and you just stack them up, and they got washers. So I had plenty of needle bearings, and they're, an inch long and 1/8 inch diameter or something. So I drilled the screw out to fit that, and then we put a dominator screw on with that needle in it that had the needle bearing, so all that extra weight was mashing on the actual needle valve that come from the factory. So, and then boom, problem solved, right? No more blubbering. We was able to jet it, get it happy, and fixed it. And so that went on for a year or two, and I fixed hundreds of them. And then people figured out what I was doing, and then some of the big carburetor companies figured it out, and then they started doing it. And so then the cat was out of the bag, but that's okay. But it was really an odd problem, and I've seen it just a couple of times on V8s, but I see it all the time on four cylinders. And I think most carburetor companies now, if they're selling a carburetor for for a four cylinder application, it comes standard with a weighted needle now, just cause it's so prevalent in the four cylinder realm. But that was, I don't even remember what year that was. I guess that was 98, 99, somewhere. Shoot, it'd probably been earlier than that. Yeah, probably 97 or 98, somewhere along in that's when all of that went on. But that's another. Just be aware of that can be a problem in some applications and will drive you insane because you're trying to tune it and it just is not responding. And just like I was talking about with the idle circuit, that's another one of them is getting fuel somewhere else. So you can turn the spigot off over here, but if the spigot's on over here, you still, you gotta solve that problem too. So we're running a little long, I see. So there's a couple of other questions or statements in the comments. I think I'm gonna just try to hit them and then we'll call this episode too. So I seen several people say, talking about drilling the butterflies, that you didn't need to do that, you just needed to fix the timing. And that's just, again, I'm not trying to be mean or nothing, but people that say stuff like that, that just proves that they just have no idea about how a carburetor works or carburetor calibration, period. So all of this performance stuff, for the most part, I mean, we run locked out distributors. So we're idling at 36 degrees. So if you think we need more timing, I mean, you just don't understand how the internal combustion engine works, for one. And for two, I mean, if you got a curve in your distributor and your timing is 36 or 38 full advance and you're idling at 10, yeah, that's a problem. And it's going to run junky at idle and it's going to be junky. I want as much timing as I can get. And the nice thing about, if you are running a curve, the nice thing about a curve kit, generally speaking, is it takes 800-900 RPM to get the springs to open up. So it'll still crank without a ton of timing, so you don't have to have $1 million starter and 1,000 cranking out battery. So I try, if we got a curved distributor, I try to see mid-20s idling and mid-30s full advance, whatever the motor likes. And another thing, while we're talking about distributors, this ain't a distributor video, but while we're talking about distributors, because I seen some of these comments too, and somebody asked, so I'm going to address it. Vacuum advance. Vacuum advance seems to be as confusing as tuning carburetors, it seems like. So I'm going to tell you how I use a vacuum advance, and then you can do whatever you want to, but I'm going to tell you how I do it and how it works the best. So the whole idea is we want to have a lot of timing at high manifold vacuum, at low load. So the way that works is, because people's talking about manifold vacuum, reported vacuum, or timed vacuum. So you want the vacuum advance on full manifold vacuum. This is how it's working. And the reason why is we want the timing to be high at the lowest load. And the way that works is the lowest load is going to be the highest manifold vacuum. So, but you need an adjustable canister. You got to have an adjustable canister, because you may not be able to put, and it pay dividends, you may not be able to put but 5 or 6 or 8 degrees of vacuum advance in the system. So for instance, this is how it would be set up and work. So say you got, we'll use a small block Chevrolet, Ford, Chrysler, it doesn't matter. And you got a XYZ distributor and you've got 25 degrees idle, you've got 36 degrees full advance, and you've got 5 degrees of vacuum advance. So cruising down the road, you just 50 mile an hour, 15% throttle, you cruising. Your timing will be if you got 5 degrees of advance, your timing will be 41 degrees. Generally speaking, that is worth, from what I've seen, a mile or two to the gallon. I mean, if you're trying to drive to Gatlinburg to the rod run, or, to some far off place, I mean, a mile to the gallon or 2 miles to the gallon, I mean, that's worth something today. To me, it is. And so the engine will crank at whatever, 10 degrees probably, without the springs engaged. And then as soon as it cranks, the base timing is 25, so now the base timing is 31. And it'll love it, because all these hot rods that we do, most of them are locked out distributors. They're cranking and running at 36 or 35 or 38, whatever they are, and it works perfectly. And so when we help people tune their hot rod, we try to do it that way. And for the most part, it works beautifully every time. And it's another way, especially if you have a distributor that, maybe you can't get the base timing to 25, right? It's a little low. Well, if you've got some vacuum advance, when you're cruising around, it's going to be up. It's going to pull some timing in for you. The idea of having the vacuum advance work in reverse, where it's adding timing with RPM, like a timed port, that's what they're talking about. To me, that's insanity, because I don't know in any instance when you want to add timing in a loaded position. So your full advance should be where it's at, and I don't know any scenario where you would want to add timing at the, at high RPM. I don't know how that works, but it works the best from what we see doing it the other way. Because like I say, low load and high vacuum, it works beautifully, adding timing with the vacuum advance. And so if you have that capability, if your distributor has that capability, and most, I think now, pretty much you can buy somebody, MSD or whoever, somebody makes a adjustable vacuum advance for most distributors. So to me, that's a no-brainer. And like the GMHEIs, we use the Moroso curve kit, and the Moroso curve kit with the lightest springs, I mean, it's just almost perfect. It does a great job. I put hundreds of them in, and they work great. And then I'm sure you can still get an adjustable vacuum advance for a standard HEI, and they're just hard to beat. I mean, they're they're really good distributors. So I think let's see, let's touch one more thing, and then we're gonna quit. So boosters, not accelerator pumps, boosters. So let's just one at a time. So this is a straight leg. This is a straight leg booster. This is what would come in like a 1850, just a standard single line 1850. And these come in 660 center squirters. Generally, most stuff with a small bore comes with a straight leg booster like this. The problem is it's very restrictive, right? It's got the spray bar in the middle. It's really long. It hangs down in the ventry, and that's how it gets the signal. They're super responsive, but they're very restrictive. All right. Then the next iteration, we call this a down leg. So if you had a 750 double pumper, or a 780 vacuum secondary, 850, 800, on and on. So it would have had this style down leg booster. It's a really good booster. This is definitely an upgrade from this in most applications, in my opinion. And then when we get on into the HP world, you get, and I don't know if you can see the difference, how much bigger the internal bore is So these are the same booster on the outside, but this booster here has been bored out and it's got a step in the bottom of it. So we call this a two-step down leg. This is a down leg, this is a two-step down leg. And all of these boosters are available in different orifice sizes. And we're not going to get into what's better for what or who, but there's multiple different orifice sizes available, and you know that gives you better signal, better itemization. You know, it's got to be sized for what fuel you're running. On and on and on and on. I don't particularly. There's another booster. It's called an annular discharge. A lot of you say. All right, camera took a dump. So on the annulars, I don't particularly like them for the most part. Some people are just all about them, but I've had much better luck with a two-step down leg than I had an annular. It just seems like, I don't know, man. The annular's big and in the way, and it itemizes good, but it pulls so much fuel that it's, I don't know. If you like annulars, knock yourself out, but the two-step down leg to me is the winner for most applications. Speaking of, you know, because it's got that second step in it, they just got a really good signal. And I don't have all the data now because it's just been too many years ago, but I flowed a carburetor with all of these different boosters, and we at 28 inches we checked how much signal was at the booster, and this puppy right here won every time. So they just work good. So having said that, I think that's enough for today. We're gonna wrap it up. Keep the questions coming, really good questions, and like I say, we'll keep going. I think there's a few more things to talk about. We might get into some slight modifications to the body and stuff, what we do to make them better and work better, and you know, cheat them up and that kind of stuff. Some of this class rule nonsense. So stay with us, and don't forget, like, share, subscribe. Don't forget about the camshaft giveaway video, and I'll try to link it in the description. We do have some Holley parts on the website, so if you need gaskets, power valves, needless seats, that kind of stuff, it is on the website, powellmachininc.com. We appreciate you. We appreciate all the comments, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much.